hello there. My name is HW, and thank you so much for watching Tone Junkie TV. Hey, dudes, 2 Kempers, 1 remote. That's right, 2 Kempers, 1 remote. Is it possible? Yes, it is. I'm going to show you. It's this rig right here. It's this setup. Now, I haven't been using this live much, but I have used it in my house, and I want to show you kind of what you're going to need to do to set up 2 Kempers with 1 singular remote. Up until now, the only time I've seen people using dual Kempers has been when they're using some sort of a MIDI controller to send MIDI signals to both Kempers, or when they're using just pedal boards in front. So they're just using the 2 Kempers by going left and right out of their like stereo reverb or stereo delay into 2 Kempers. And that's how people are achieving, you know, double kind of stereo profiles. Obviously the Kemper can do stereo, it can do stereo effects, but we can only run 1 profile at a time. So that can be challenging for some people. I understand the geekery, you want to run 2 amps at once. A lot of people do 2 amp setups. That's why I've made dual amp profiles in the past, and other people have as well. But still then, you can't separate the amps left and right. Well, you can with 2 Kempers. But if you are a remote user like me, maybe you've been scratching your head, how can I do that? Now, let me show you how you're going to need to set this up, because there's a fairly specific way you need to set this up. But all the features to do this are built into the Kemper. It's one of those features that they definitely built in because they knew people were going to want to use 2 Kempers with 1 remote, but it just doesn't get talked about a lot. So I'm going to show you how to do that. First of all, let me just explain, you're going to, for the purpose of this demo, you're going to want to think of the Kempers as Kemper 1, your main Kemper, and then sort of Kemper 2. Maybe you could think of it as a slave Kemper or something. But basically, we're going to be focusing on getting this unit working and sending the proper signals out to this unit so that this unit follows the cues and commands of this unit. So we'll make this white Kemper right here, Kemper 1, and my Mario themed black Kemper we'll call Kemper 2 for the purpose of this video. Here's the first thing you need to do. You need to connect these Kempers via MIDI. Now, I'm not going to show you the back panel of the Kemper. You can find the MIDI jacks on the back. There's an in, an out, and a through. You're going to want to go MIDI out of this Kemper into this Kemper. I promise you, for those of you who dislike MIDI like I do, I don't like MIDI either. It's confusing, it's a lot of numbers, it's intimidating. That's the only thing you're going to have to do with MIDI. Literally plug MIDI out of Kemper 1 into MIDI in of Kemper 2. That's all. Because we're going to send signals via MIDI, and the Kemper already knows how to talk to another Kemper. I'm going to show you how to turn that feature on, because it's built in. The next thing we need to do before we touch any settings on the Kemper is we need to get our signal into both Kempers. Well, how are we going to do that? There's 2 ways you can do that. You can split your signal up front. Now, if you're running pedals of any kind, or you want to run delays into the front of these Kempers, you may be utilizing a unit that will have left and right out. You could put an HX stomp in front of here. You could put an ABY cable, or you could put an ABY switcher. You can do all those things, but you don't need any additional gear. The Kemper's got you covered, because what I'm doing is I'm bringing my guitar into Kemper 1. So my input of my guitar runs directly into Kemper 1. And then I'm utilizing the direct output send on the back of the Kemper and bringing that to the input of Kemper 2. You may be thinking, HW, what are you talking about? You're taking all the effects from this Kemper and sending them to that one? No, I'm going to show you how to set up that output right now. I'm going to, on the back of this Kemper, I'm going to use the direct out send with a 1/4 inch out, and I'm going to go into the front of this Kemper. And to set that up, I'm going to go into my output menu. I'm going to come right here to direct output. Maybe you can read that screen on the video, maybe you can't. But trust me, it says main output, monitor output, direct output, and SPDIF output. I'm going to just change my direct output. That's the cable on the back of the Kemper. That's the input. That's the 1/4 inch on the back of the Kemper that says direct out / send. I'm going to take that and I'm going to switch it. It's probably up here at like mod mono, or maybe it's off on yours. I don't know. I use it for profiling a lot, but maybe you've never used that. You're going to push it all the way down, almost like you're turning that knob to 0, and it's going to say off. If you go up 1 from there, it says git analog, GIT analog. That means the Kemper is going to take your analog signal that you send into this Kemper. It's going to use it to run this Kemper, but it's also going to send that same analog guitar signal out into this Kemper. Some of you are thinking, wait a minute, has it gone through a digital converter? I really don't know. It's probably buffered though, at least. So probably yes, it's been converted. But what it's saying is it's sending just the analog signal of the guitar so that both these Kempers aren't going to see any effects or any profiles or any of that sort of sound. It's just going to see the actual signal from the guitar. And that's important because that's what you would have in a dual amp setup. And this is really trying to be like a dual amp setup. 2 Kempers, 1 remote, MIDI out of your main Kemper to MIDI in of your second Kemper. Then you're going to want to go direct out, 1/4 inch output into the input of the second Kemper. Direct output / send is the name of the port on the back. You're going to come into the input of the second Kemper. You're going to come into your output stage. You're going to set direct output to guitar analog. When you do that, direct output is no longer being controlled by the master volume. So you don't need to worry about that. The reason sometimes it's controlled and sometimes it isn't is because depending on what you set that output to be, you could use that output for different things. You could use that output in a wet, dry, wet setup. I could show you that in another video. You could use that output to just record your analog guitar signal so that later you can reamp. You could do a lot of things with a Kemper. They thought of everything. I've not run into anything you can't do, like with these ins and outs. You can set them up to be everything. Once you've done that, now we've got signal going to both Kempers. But how are we going to control them with the remote? Well, here's what we're going to do. We've already run our MIDI out cable from Kemper number 1 to Kemper number 2. Plug your remote in to Kemper number 1. Okay, we're going to treat Kemper number 1 like it doesn't even know it has a little brother over here. It doesn't even know it has a cousin. It's just relaying some messages. Whoever picks it up, we're golden. Plug your remote into here. Now, next thing you need to do, we need to go into the system menu. System menu, and you're going to scroll over until you find something that is on page 15 of 18. There are 18 pages of options in the system menu when I hold down that system button for the Kemper. You're going to come in here and there's a small thing next to forget pedal to MIDI. Don't worry about that. Forget send MIDI clock. Don't worry about that. We're not going to deal with that. Very first option, UI to MIDI. Check the box. You only need to check it on this Kemper number 1. What does that do? UI is short for user interface. And that means whatever I now do to this Kemper is going to be sent via MIDI to this Kemper. We've now told this Kemper that whatever signals it receives from the remote and whatever signals I give it here on the user interface, it needs to author and send a MIDI command to a secondary Kemper. I hit my number 1, number 2, both rigs changed. I changed both rigs on both Kempers. What do you know? We got one remote working with 2 different Kempers. So beautiful. Now there's one more thing you need to do. This may be necessary, it may not be necessary, depending on which profiles you're running, but it's a good idea to turn this feature on whenever you're using 2 Kempers. That's the constant latency feature. It's in the system menu. Let me show you that. Go in the system menu. You're going to need to do this on both Kempers. I've already turned mine on, but it's back at the front here. It's actually, it's on page 4 of 18. So page 4 of the system menu, constant latency. This will somehow magically tell your Kemper, I've done it on both Kempers, so you need to do it on Kemper 1 and Kemper 2. This gets rid of any phasing problems you're going to have when it comes to profiles. If you have never created a profile or you haven't worked with microphones on guitars much, let me explain something to you. A speaker pushes and pulls. That push and pull creates a sound wave, an arc and a dip, a hill and a valley. The reason that's important is that sound is a vibration. It travels in waves. Speakers push and create a hill. They pull and create a valley, I think. I don't know which they create on which, but they push and pull like this to create that vibration. What's interesting about that is that you can have a speaker where you're sending a signal in and it's one speaker is pushing and the other's pulling. That's what they call out of phase. When you have one speaker creating a sound wave that pushes and another pulls, or a hill and a valley, that's going to create cancellation, and to your ear, you're not going to hear audibly frequencies that are being canceled out. That's a really useful feature. The other thing is, apart from just being out of phase where one's pushing and one's pulling, there can be degrees of out of phase. These are especially hard to correct. And to correct them, you would need to actually set up a delay at a sound desk or on the Kemper to correct them. And where that comes from is microphone distance. When a profiler like myself or Michael Britt or anybody else is creating a profile, the speaker is moving. There's different places on that speaker that are creating sound. The speaker's concaved. So you have a microphone that's picking up sound from different parts of the speaker. And then when you pull that microphone back or forward, you now have a delay, a time delay, a very small time delay that it takes the sound to get from that speaker to that microphone. If I set my mics directly on the speaker, but Michael Britt puts them 6 inches back, we're going to have some cancellation because I have a different time interval that the sound, compared to the guitar signal hitting the amp, the sound took to get from the speaker to the microphone. This is especially hard to correct. I'm saying all this to explain to you why the constant latency feature in the Kemper is absolutely brilliant. Because if you were trying to do this with a device that didn't have constant latency, that latency is the distance between the microphone and the speaker and whatever's picking it up, the time that it could take to travel through extra cable, through a preamp. Although that time is microscopic by nature, when you put two signals on top of each other, that cancellation happens. Even if it's the amount of cancellation depends on how much difference there is. Anyway, enough about that. Constant latency, you got to turn that on. If I'm being exhaustive in this explanation, it's because there's a lot of things you kind of got to do, and I'm really trying to avoid a lot of people emailing me saying, I followed your instructions and it didn't work. I don't believe you. Follow these instructions very carefully and it will work. I'm being very exhaustive for that reason. So to recap, MIDI out to MIDI in. Turn on UI to MIDI in the system menu. Take the direct out send jack on the back of this unit, Kemper 1, put it in the input of this unit. Go into output and set that direct output send into program it to be guitar analog so that the guitar analog signal is hitting both Kempers. Turn on constant latency for both Kempers. Congratulations, ladies and gentlemen. You are now using one remote with two cables and one remote with two Kempers, and it sounds a little something like this. Now, I'm using my HW Nose Tone performance that is for free on the Tone Junkie website. And I use this on recordings, I use this in videos, and I use this live. If you're anything like me, you probably just realized. Congratulations, HW. You just set up two Kempers with one remote and they're running the exact same sound. Why? Well, I think this is an important place to start to get these set up because I like starting from a point, like from my performance here, but now we inevitably need to edit the second Kemper so that we have a different amp, so we have different effects. Right now, I'm sending stereo up here to my DAW, but it's running the same exact thing. They're both running a quarter note, a dotted eighth. The reverbs are the exact same because I put them both in the same, they're both running the same performance. Here's something that you need to realize. The performance that you run with the Kemper needs to be on the same number here. It needs to be here, the same number. So I'm running this in slot 7 of my performances. If you don't line them up, you'll be pulling up some other random performance over here. Now that we've put, I think this is a good way to start. Let's start by putting the same performance in both Kempers. Now let's start editing this. Okay, now one challenge I need to make clear to you is that there's a couple ways you're going to have to kind of use the features of the Kemper to hear both Kempers isolated. You can either do it from your DAW, or I'm going to show you how to do it here with your Kemper. I'm also going to show you some of the inherent challenges with this unit sending MIDI over here to this unit, and this unit not knowing, hey, I just want to hear one unit at a time, or I just want to edit one unit at a time. So be aware of this. Here, if I turn on an effect on the front of this Kemper number 1, it turns on Kemper number 2. Okay? Why? That user interface is sending a MIDI signal. If I come over here and I turn on and off a Kemper, if I turn on and off a setting, it doesn't affect Kemper number 1. Why? I don't have my MIDI running both ways. I could do that. Did you hear me? I could do that. I could set up the MIDI cable to go out, in, and then anytime I changed any Kemper, it would do that. Here's why that's not that useful right now. Right now, I need to edit this performance to be a complementary performance to my first one. So I love the sound of my first performance. So first things first, there's a couple things we can do. One, if you want to edit this Kemper, all you have to do is touch it, move it around, you'll be good, you'll be golden. Let's say I want to edit this Kemper though while I leave that one alone. Well, here's where it's really useful. Lock your effects. Let's say you want to lock everything. I could lock my effects. Now when I come up, now these effects are locked, and that lock overrides the MIDI commands. So when I come over here, I could turn off all my effects. It doesn't affect Kemper number 2 now because I've locked that section. I've told Kemper number 2, put on your big boy pants, be your own boss. Don't let Kemper number 1 tell you what to do anymore. He's bullying you. No, he's not. He's being your friend. But that's a useful feature. That means I can come over here and make adjustments to my Kemper number 1 without messing with Kemper number 2 if I want to do that, because in just 1 second, we're going to put on some different amps. We're going to put on some different sounds. Now, the other thing you should be aware of, let me unlock that so I don't confuse myself later. That's unlocked. The other thing you should be aware of is, what if I just want to hear one Kemper over the other? Okay, well, there's 2 easy ways to do that. Basically, right now, I've got one Kemper. I can just turn off the volume. Like, it should be, what do you mean by that? Well, if I don't want to hear Kemper number 1 right now, I just want to listen to Kemper number 2 while I edit it. See, they're both on. But if I go right here to the output section, my main output is set to master mono. I have both of these set to master mono right now because 2 mono signals is creating a stereo signal when I start changing effects. All I got to do is bring that down to off. HW, isn't that going to silence the signal? No. See, now you're just hearing it over here. So you're just hearing that on one side of the stereo field, because what's happening is there's no output signal coming from here. I've turned the main outs off. It's still sending my guitar signal through. Let's come over here and let's turn that on earlier. I didn't mean to. That was the like a doubler, like a pog. So, okay, I dig this sound, like I like it, it's cool. It's a great sound, I like it, it's what I'm used to playing. I play it with different guitars. This guitar's a little bright, a little on the brighter side, but I want to change this stack out, and I want to do that for different performances. Like maybe sometimes I want one amp and sometimes I want another one. What I basically want to do right now is create a complementary performance to this performance. I'll tell you why I approach it this way, because sometimes I'm going to use one Kemper and I want all my sounds to be there. Now I'm going to create a complementary performance. I'm not gonna mess with my settings too much, but I'm just gonna show you how to do it. I'm gonna lock my stomps here so that I have it, and then I'm just gonna actually change out the full profile. So here's my, yeah, let's go LE Pine J4 for this. I want a little gain on there. And now it's gonna show me Fullerton 5 Edge 3. No, is that right? What did I just select? Oh, I went to a different amp. Okay, well, let's just go with that amp because I don't know where the other amp is now. Don't you love it when you watch videos on people telling you how to use a Kemper and it looks like they don't know how to use a Kemper? I personally really like that. Okay, anyway, here, I found my J4. This is also a 5E3, so that works perfectly. Here's the Edge, the 5E3 Edge that Fender made. It's the Fender amp that is the Edges, and it sounds like this. Okay, so that's one thing I can do. Now, what's another thing I can do? Well, what if I take one of my delays out of here, like my dotted eighth, and I'm also running an eighth, so I've got a dotted eighth and an eighth. Well, what if I take this and I put something else in parallel with it? I'm going to change right here the value of the notes. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put in like a fourth. Should I do a dotted fourth? No. That could be cool. Let me put a fourth over here, and let me, so I'm going to double that up with a fourth. No, I want to put the fourth in the back here, and I want to change my reverb. So I'm going to put a fourth, and let's put something fast, like a 16th. So there'll be a little, so you hear that really fast 16th and a quarter note, right? So that's going to be longer, and then I've got a dotted eighth and an eighth in here. Is this too much delay? Probably. I'm just showing you what you can do. And now with my reverb, I'm going to go the Cirrus reverb. I'm going to go this chorus one. And yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to bring it down a little bit. I'm going to up the decay time so that it's longer. I want it to be long and low in the mix. So we're going to hear, I'm going to put the mix at about 30. I'm going to move the modulation up. The attack time I'm going to keep low. Yep, I want it there. That's cool. Now that I've done this, just so you're aware, I believe this has probably erased the morphing. So you got to put the morphing in separately. Like the morphing was there, but now that I'm changing reverbs, what does that do to the morphing? Well, I believe it's going to clear the morphing if I change the reverb, because it's not going to just morph the same parameters, because not all the parameters are constant. Now here is my sound now. It's super like ethereal, it's super ambient, ethereal and everything. It's cool. It works. It works for this. Now, let me turn the other Kemper back on. And to do that, I'm going to, what did I do? I muted the output. So I'm going to come in here, main output, and I'm going to bring it back to master mono. Now, here's everything together.